Hello and welcome back to this damnable idealistic crusade. This is my next video in reading and reviewing the Avon novels based on the classic Character of the Phantom by Lee Falk. And this is the second book in the series to be written by the series creator himself, Lee Falk. Most of these, if not all of these stories, were pulled directly from or based upon stories from the original Phantom newspaper strip, which Lee Falk wrote and created. But only certain volumes were written by Falk, and others were ghost written under some under pseudonyms, but they were all, again, from Falk's original stories. And most of them are actually written by Ron Goulart when you look at the actual, who the actual pen name belongs to. And thankfully, all of the Hermes Press reprints that I'm reading do credit the original author. But you can tell the difference when the series creator and primary writer and architect of the character and series is the one doing the writing, because immediately the tone changes, the energy level changes, even though it's still a wonderful, very straightforward, pulpy adventure story that, clocks in at a certain page count. So all of these are rather, I wouldn't say brief, but they are quick and enjoyable reads because you get thrown into an adventure almost immediately. And again, they are based on original strip stories, so they are already designed for a newspaper strip, and they're actually being expanded upon a bit here in novel form. But when you have the series creator and primary writer doing the work, there's a difference. So this is, so far, this is, I think, the most energetic and engaging book since the first book, which Falk also wrote. And all the books in between have been great and are loads of fun, but you can't quite compete with the with the creator of the series doing the writing on select volumes. So I'm really excited to get to the other ones that Falk wrote, because I'm sure that different sort of additional quality of spirit, shall we say, will also be there. So book 6 is The Mysterious Ambassador, and plot-wise, this one is actually quite a bit more expansive than a lot of the adventures so far. The first book was basically the origin story of the Phantom retold in book form, with lovely flashbacks to Phantoms of past generations thrown in. And the other books up to this point have been singular stories that, are well told and everything, but they're not as they're not very expansive. There is a little bit of globetrotting in some of them. There's a little bit of traveling, but the actual mysteries and nefarious plots to be stopped are not always quite earth-shattering, at least in the Avon Phantom novels, in terms of the stories that are being adapted. You do get that a little bit in book 3, with the Scorpio organization being sort of Spectre-like and being a worldwide criminal network. But here in Mysterious Ambassador, there's a much greater sense of story scale. So the basic plot of this novel is that there is a political changeover in the home country of Bengala, where the Phantom is from. And the general in charge isn't quite a fan of the much more progressive direction things are going, and stages a coup and takes over the country. So, civil war threatens to perhaps break out, and everything is held under military control, with this extremely villainous and wonderful character that Falk develops for the villain of the piece. And of course, because you have to have the heroine and main love interest of a classic adventure story thrown in somewhere, Diana Palmer just happens to be in the country at the time. But interestingly, she's not a damsel in distress, and she is there for a good reason, because she is actually part of a UN medical team that had just finished up badly needed work in the area, and they're caught in the crossfire of this military coup that's staged pretty much overnight. So now we have two separate stories going in terms of things that the Phantom himself will have to try and stop. And then, he essentially becomes the mysterious ambassador of the title, having to deal with not just the military occupation of the country, but also having to save and rescue not just the UN team, but also his great love in Diana, and also trying to make sure that the actual ambassador team that the UN sends in to try and negotiate the situation and prevent things from going south more quickly, make sure they're not eliminated and are actually protected as well. So then it becomes a sort of three plot story because you have the additional subplot of the UN ambassadors. So this is easily the most expansive of these stories to date, and if you're reading the Avon novel start to finish, and because it's Lee Falk writing this one, it has that additional sense of energy, that greater sense of spirit, that greater sense of narrative drive, and there is that sense of engagement with the reader that really sparks off in that first book that he also wrote. So reading them in chronological order, this is easily the best one since the first book. And all the books have been great up to this point. I don't think there's a bad one in this series. And there are 15 novels, but again, you can tell, even if you didn't know who wrote them, you could tell, I think, the ones that he wrote, because it's just immediately from the first page. And you also find yourself grinning a lot more because the humor is not just more vivid, it's more varied. And that's something that I think has always set the Phantom apart quite a bit from a lot of other superhero or vigilante characters, that the Phantom never loses that sense of joie de vivre, or that sense of that spirit of adventure, with the occasional bit of whimsical humor thrown in here and there. It's never too much, it's never on the nose, but it's those little moments that make the reader grin and never be bored. So this is an incredible, fun, wonderful, thrilling adventure start to finish. It's one of those books that you start and you simply don't want to put down because it's that well plotted and put together. It's extraordinarily engaging. Again, I do think reading these in order, this is the best one since the first one. It actually, so far, I think it rivals the first one as perhaps maybe being my favorite of the series so far. And again, I would say this even not knowing who wrote the individual books in terms of all the ghostwriters and things. But you definitely get that sense that, okay, yes, the creator of the character is on board here, because just the spirit of the prose is so much more vibrant. And because the story is much more convoluted and the stakes are much higher, and you have not one but really three sort of plots going on, it feels much more involved. And so I think that also makes it feel a bit stronger than the books that immediately preceded it, that were much more singular, straightforward adventures without as many additional subplots and without as great stakes, because here we're not just talking about a small town, we're talking about an entire nation, and with the threat being that this military coup could easily become a dictatorship, or it could lead to civil war. So there are great stakes involved. So this is, I think, one of the best of the series so far, even though I'm really only about halfway through. And if you're looking to try any of these, I would definitely say, read the first one, because you get the Phantom's origin there. But if you're curious about others as well, I would definitely suggest The Mysterious Ambassador, which is an absolutely fantastic, fun read. Like the other books in this series, it's not a particularly long book, so you can read it in one sitting. And honestly, reading these so far, I have to force myself to slow down a little bit, because I am a little bit of a fast reader, but when it's a book that's this engaging and this fun to read, there are times where I find myself going through it so fast that I have to make myself slow down a little bit, because I want to savor it a little bit more. That's how enjoyable this is. That's how well put together and well written and engaging it is. And again, books 2 through 5 are all great and great fun, and again, based on Phantom stories that already existed in the newspaper strips. But this one, it has that extra sparkle that the first book has. And again, you can't really compete with the creator and writer of the character coming on and writing a few books in this series. So I think that automatically all the ones that Lee Falk wrote are just going to be that much above, just because of who he was, and nobody in the world knew the character better than he did. So that's what I think sets this book apart just a bit more. And because it is, again, a more involving story with many more things going on. And I also like the fact that not only is Diana Palmer involved here, but she's actually given things to do, and she has a reason for being there. It's not just sheer coincidence, which does happen in some of the other books. So I really like that whenever possible, she's given things to do and reasons to be there, and isn't a damsel in distress. And also, I think you can tell the difference when Falk is writing the characters, because they do seem a bit more textured, whether it's the Phantom himself, or Diana Palmer, or the villains, or the members of the Jungle Patrol. They all seem a bit more textured, a bit more nuanced, and have a bit more maybe grit and determination that in the other books that he didn't write, you maybe have to sort of read into the descriptions a little bit more to get that same sort of resonance in terms of characterization. That's just how it appears to me in reading these, but this one was just ridiculous fun. So if you were to check out any of the Avon Phantom novels, I would definitely suggest starting with the ones that Lee Falk himself wrote. I would recommend the whole series, because I'm halfway through and I've loved every single book. But I think in particular, books 1 and then here in book 6 are really excellent examples of not just these novels, but really who the Phantom is as a character, why he has lasted all these years as one of the key foundational superhero characters, and why the Phantom's appeal is immortal. And you read stories like these, you'll love the character forever, because the appeal of the Phantom is undying, and you're never ever bored. Now, once again, this is from the Hermes Press reprint series. So we have the beautiful original George Wilson artwork with its very, very pulpy art style from the original Avon paperback, reproduced on this lovely larger dimension trade paperback size. So these are, of course, bigger than the originals. I have an example of an Avon book here, which is just standard paperback size. And the Avon paperbacks themselves are very rare. They rarely pop up, and they're usually rather expensive when they do. So the reprints, being at an average modern price for a trade paperback, really are a great option, because these have never been reprinted before. The rears all look pretty nice. This, of course, like the rest, uses a section of the original artwork on the back as well, and then you have just a simple matching spine to go with the other ones. I really like how these fit in the hand. The layout of the text is really nice. And of course, they all open with the iconic Phantom prologue as well, which is really a nice touch. And then I just like the layout of these. A lot of the chapters in these are a little on the short side, because they were originally designed as a small paperback. And so these are rather slim volumes, because they're still only clocking in at anywhere between 135 to about 155, 160 pages. So again, they are slim volumes. They are quick reads. They were originally printed as small paperbacks. But even though the artwork and the paperback design sold them as pulpy men's adventure stories, they're really wonderful, timeless adventure stories. So don't think it's just super pulpy and there's no resonance just because the artwork looks amazing. These are wonderful Phantom stories, and they are, of course, based on stories from the original long-running newspaper strip itself. But in particular volumes, the ones written by Lee Falk, like this one here, are really special. So even though I think every book has been great and is wonderful fun so far, this one is my favorite since the first one, and I don't know, might be tied with it so far as my favorite of these reading through chronologically. So that's why I've been doing these video reviews. I really want to spread the love and joy of the character of the Ghost Who Walks, and encourage anyone to check out some of the reprints that Hermes Press has been doing. You can still get these from their website, which I will link to in the description below. I went ahead and just bought the whole set because I've been always wanting to read these, and I didn't even know they had reprinted them. So I was very excited to find out about the reprints because again, original copies are quite expensive, and you'd have to pay quite a bit to get all of them. So it kind of makes sense to just get the reprint. So those are my thoughts on the Hermes Press reprint of Book 6 of the Avon Phantom series, The Mysterious Ambassador by Lee Falk. If you're looking for a Phantom adventure and you've never tried one, and you're not interested in reading the origin, this actually might be the perfect one to try first. It's a beautifully self-contained adventure, but I think it contains all the requisite great elements of the Phantom character and the world of the Phantom that it would give any newcomer a great idea and view of why this character is so legendary. So if you're interested, I highly suggest going to Hermes Press and picking up some of these reprints and enjoy a journey to the deep woods and happy phantoming.